You are standing on top of a graveyard right now. Not metaphorically. If you have ever walked through Manhattan, you have walked over bones, foundations, and entire vanished towns. You just did not know it. The city you see is a mask, and the real answer to what lies beneath it is far stranger than you think. New York feels permanent. Glass towers, endless concrete, a skyline that looks like it has always been there and always will be. But scrape away 400 years and something else appears. A shoreline twice the size it is today. Forests thick enough to get lost in. Freshwater springs bubbling up through the bedrock. Before it was a city, this was one of the richest ecosystems in North America. Ecologist Eric Sanderson spent over a decade trying to prove that. His Mannahatta project used old maps, tide charts, and soil samples to digitally rebuild Manhattan exactly as it looked in 1609. What he found surprised even him. More ecological communities existed on this one island than in Yellowstone National Park. Wolves, black bears, 55 species of orchid. A tidal marsh, not a financial district, once sat where Wall Street now stands. Why does that matter to you? Because the ground still remembers. Beneath Foley Square, city workers digging a foundation in 1991 hit something they were not expecting. Human remains. Then more. Then hundreds more. What they had found was the African burial ground, a colonial-era cemetery holding the remains of an estimated 15,000 free and enslaved Africans. It had been built over, paved over, and erased from public memory for 2 centuries. Anthropologist Michael Blakey led the team that studied the remains. His research uncovered something the city had spent generations avoiding. Skeletal stress markers showing brutal, unrelenting physical labor. Evidence of malnutrition. Evidence of grief. In the careful way some bodies were buried with shells and beads, a quiet defiance against a system built to erase them. New York's economy in the 1700s depended more heavily on enslaved labor than most people realize. The bones underground told a story the buildings above ground never did. Here's the strange part. Erasure like this was not an accident. It was a pattern, and it happened again, less than 200 years later, in the exact center of the island. Before Central Park existed, a community existed there instead. Seneca Village. Founded in 1825, it was one of the first stable communities of free black property owners in New York City. It had homes, churches, a school. By the 1850s, roughly 250 residents lived there, alongside Irish and German immigrant families. Then the city decided it wanted a park. Through eminent domain, New York seized the land. Residents were forced out. Their homes were demolished. And for over a century, the story of Seneca Village disappeared so completely that most New Yorkers walking through the park today have no idea it ever existed. In the 1990s, historians Diana Wall and Nan Rothschild led an archaeological excavation to bring it back. Their teams found foundations, dishware, a child's shoe, fragments of a community that had been physically wiped off the map but never actually vanished. It was just buried, waiting. You start to notice a rhythm the deeper you dig. A city that builds itself by covering what came before. Not just physically, culturally. Go back further, past the colonists, past the earliest maps, and you reach the people who were here first. The Lenape. For thousands of years before Henry Hudson ever sailed into the harbor, the Lenape lived across what is now New York, New Jersey, and parts of Pennsylvania and Connecticut. They fished these waters. They planted along these riverbanks. Streets you walk down today, like Broadway, may trace paths first worn by Lenape trails through the forest. Within a few generations of European contact, disease and displacement devastated their population. Most descendants of the Lenape today live far from Manhattan, in Oklahoma, Wisconsin, and parts of Canada, the result of forced removals that pushed them west over and over again. The island named after their word for it, Mannahatta, meaning island of many hills, kept their name. It just stopped keeping their people. So why does a city do this? Why does it bury its own history so thoroughly, generation after generation? Psychologists who study collective memory point to something uncomfortable. Cities, like people, tend to remember what flatters them and forget what implicates them. A booming metropolis needs a clean origin story. Waterfront property, free land, a blank slate ready for ambition. Admitting that the slate was never blank complicates the story a city likes to tell about itself. But the ground does not forget, even when the people do. Every time construction crews break through pavement to lay a new subway line or dig a foundation for another tower, they risk striking the same layers. Old wooden ships, buried when Lower Manhattan's shoreline was extended using landfill. Colonial-era wells. Sometimes remains. The city has been quietly rewritten so many times that beneath nearly every block sits a version of New York that no longer officially exists. Think about what that means the next time you walk through Central Park, or stand on a subway platform, or look up at a skyscraper on Wall Street. You are not standing on empty ground that a city was built upon. You are standing on top of choices. Choices about who got remembered and who got removed. There is something almost mirror-like about it, if you look closely enough. You do the same thing, on a smaller scale, inside your own mind. You bury memories that complicate the story you tell about yourself. You pave over the uncomfortable version of events with a cleaner one. Not because the original didn't happen, but because it's easier to build on top of a story you can live with. New York just does it in concrete and steel instead of memory, which is, in a strange way, more honest. Because the proof never fully disappears. It waits in the soil. It waits under the pavement. And eventually, someone digs it up again. You are standing on top of a graveyard right now. But now you know exactly what that means. Not a metaphor. A city built, layer by layer, on the things it tried very hard to forget.